Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the new REDMAGIC Nova Gaming Tablet. Let's get started. This is the first tablet just announced globally by REDMAGIC, so let's get to know it. This is a manufacturer 100% focused on gaming, so it will be a tablet that will give very high priority to this section. So we're going to try to focus directly on gaming, but anyway, let me tell you the rest of its features. And first, the price. Its overall price has been announced at $499, but as you know, REDMAGIC also has its store for Mexico. So the official price for Mexico is 11,999 pesos. This for the 12GB RAM edition with 256 storage. But there is also a 16GB RAM edition with 512 storage, which will be more expensive. If you enter the REDMAGIC store on October 7th, you will be able to have an additional benefit since the pre-sale is on October 15th and on October 16th the official sale begins. So if you are interested in acquiring it, please stay tuned. And in the description, I leave you the official link to their store. Once we have known this, join me to know its design. This is the only color available. It's called Midnight and it's a tablet built in aluminum. But as you can see on this back, we find the REDMAGIC logo to give it a more attractive touch, although it does not have any RGB lighting. The RGB will be found directly on the fan, which is placed in this small strip that has certain transparencies and some other elements that make the tablet gain an attractive design aesthetically. This tablet is 7.3 millimeters thick and weighs 530 grams. The truth is that it feels solid. It is not an exaggeratedly light tablet because you have to consider that it is a tablet that is not too big, but it feels a little heavy for its size. However, it has a tremendous cooling system which I'll tell you about in more detail later, but that may cause the weight to be not so low. However, believe me, the cooling system is excellent. At the bottom, we will find some pins where we can connect the keyboard accessory, although it has not been announced for now the sale in Mexico. But if it is available in the future, you could even use this tablet for writing and for your school, since it also supports a stylus. But I insist these additional accessories have not been announced for Mexico for now. This stylus can be magnetically attached to the top. There it has its placement, and up here there are also two microphones along with the volume buttons. On the left side we will find the on-off button, which at the same time will be the air outlet of the fan, while two speakers are also placed there. On the right side are placed two other speakers along with a microphone and the USB-C port. This USB-C port also allows projection of your screen via HDMI adapters. Or you can also do wireless projection, but obviously wired projection will have less latency. And in this case, REDMAGIC offers a special feature to project your screen in an advanced way. It's called Z SmartCast, and for example, it would allow you to use the tablet simply as a gamepad and project the game on the big screen. So I think that could be an interesting alternative as well. And the simple fact that it allows you to project its screen via cable would also make it easier for you to connect to a projector, for example. And I always like to give this detail that using the Google Slides app does allow you to have the moderator view on the tablet and the presentation view on the screen. So, in a way, it can replace even some laptops depending on how you use it. In this case, unlike cell phones, we do not find any special switch to enter game mode. So for that, we will have to access the quick settings list. The screen has a size of 10.9 inches. So I insist that it is a tablet that is not considered too big, but it makes good use of space as it has sufficiently reduced bezels. The ratio of this screen is 16:10, so it is slightly wider. It is going to offer us as a positive point the resolution and the refresh rate, since we are talking about a 2.8K resolution. Specifically, it is 1800 by 2880 pixels, reaching a density of 311 pixels per inch, which to talk about a tablet is very good. You can really see the contents very sharp, and there is no detail in this aspect that is negative. The refresh rate is 144 Hz, so it's also going to give you this feeling of ultra-fluid movements even if the games don't go at a very high refresh rate. At least the movements and transitions that you make in the system are going to look very smooth. But it's an IPS display, so it doesn't have as high a contrast as we might have on an AMOLED display, and that will possibly disappoint some people. Also, the AMOLED screen would allow you to have a maybe a little bit thinner or lighter design, but in this case it doesn't incorporate that screen technology, and it's surely one of the improvements that many fans will be looking forward to for the next generation. Nice. But the truth is that it is also going to offer us good color and overall good enough viewing angles. I think the only thing that will be missed will be the contrast that an AMOLED screen can give you, but as a benefit it will offer us a touch sampling rate of 840 Hz, so the screen responds very quickly to touches, which greatly benefits the gaming experience. This tablet integrates 4 speakers as I had already anticipated, and it is a sound that is really very wide, which also benefits the gaming experience because if someone comes from the left or from the right, you can easily detect it. It's a sound that is very powerful and has good quality. Let's listen to a small test, but remember that it is not the same as listening to it live. In software also offers us the DTS sound, so we have access to a 10-band equalizer or 3 presets available and does allow us to modify the sound of the speakers, so the experience in that sense is very good. Here, what may come to disappoint more than one who likes gaming is that it has no headphone jack, therefore forcibly you will need a USB-C adapter if you want to enjoy an experience without any delay, as Bluetooth headphones, however advanced they are, still have some delay that could complicate things a lot to play with headphones. So that aspect I think was a mistake considering that it is a tablet 100% focused on gaming. In this tablet we are going to find 3 microphones distributed in the frames. Let's listen to a test. This is an audio test recorded with the built-in microphones of the REDMAGIC Nova Gaming Tablet. I don't know if you noticed, but at the beginning and at the end of this audio recording you could hear a little noise, and that's because I had the fan on. So if you want to chat with your friends while you are playing, or you want to do some transmission while you are playing, it is likely that the sound of the fan will be noticeable when you are silent, but while you are talking I think it is not perceived. However, obviously the ideal is to turn off the fan if you want your voice to be as clear as possible. Let's now listen to a test with the fan off. This is another audio now with the fan off. And there's another point that sometimes we don't know where to mention, which is about the optical motor. This device has 2 optical motors on the x-axis, and believe me, the vibration sensation is very strong, so if you are going to play without using gamepad, the feedback it gives you in your hand is really very advanced. I love that aspect, although it is recommended to play with a gamepad because it can be a bit uncomfortable or tiring to be playing while holding this tablet in your hand, but that's up to each user. We will not talk much about the cameras, but let me tell you that the front camera has a resolution of 20 megapixels with aperture f2.0 and fixed focus. The resolution, the truth is that it is very good. It is a camera that is going to give you much more quality than a laptop camera in this same price range could give you. So, honestly, I think it is a spectacular camera. For video calls, it will be very good. Even if you want to make a transmission directly using this camera, the result will be very good. The camera gives you full HD video, while the rear camera is about 26 or 28 millimeters. It gives us a 50 megapixel sensor, f1.8 aperture, and autofocus. It might be useful for scanning some documents, although the focal length is a bit close, so at times you have to move a long way away from the document to get it framed properly. So I honestly don't find it the best of experiences, but hey, it's not a tablet focused on the camera or photography. And despite that, this camera is capable of recording video in 4K at up to 60 frames per second. You're looking at some videos that I shot in 4K at 30 frames per second, but it's not really amazing either. The video quality is perceived as very simple. In the software, we will find REDMAGIC OS 9 running on Android 14. Specifically, it is version 9.5.9, so it comes very well optimized. I really like that several applications are adapted for tablet. Even the sound recorder comes well adapted with 2 columns. The file manager also comes well adapted. That is something that speaks well of the brand that seeks to optimize its products in a good way. Although curiously its accessories application is not very well adapted, let's say, but in general it is perceived as a good experience. It is not perceived simply as a smartphone interface stretch for tablet. In fact, note that it has a sidebar from which you can open applications in floating format. And here the important thing is that it allows you to open up to 3 apps in this format, which is very interesting because even Instagram and YouTube do support this mode. And of course, opening these applications in this format is much more practical and more comfortable because not all applications are well adapted. And for example, Instagram would open in full screen and you don't have such a comfortable visualization as you could have if you open this app in a floating format. There are even some apps that you can transform them from full screen to floating screen in this way. So yes, you can get to have this good productivity experience. And in case you want some applications to run differently, you can also perfectly in the settings adapt their operation. For example, Facebook that opens in a terrible way, we could select it to run centered and at least it won't look so bad. Although as always I prefer to open things through the web browser, which in this case include their own web browser, but it looks pretty badly designed. That one doesn't look very nice, so I would prefer to use Google Chrome. And from Google Chrome, obviously, the apps will be able to be displayed in a better way. Although because of the screen format, which is a little bit more widescreen, sometimes you don't get to have such a spacious experience, but note that Google Chrome can hide its navigation bar as well, so that improves. But obviously at the software level, what will stand out the most will be the gaming features. Here is the switch to enter GameSpace, which will be the manager of all the games you have installed. It even has some music that you can disable from this panel. We will also be able to change the view of your games if you do not want to see them in a list, but in a kind of grid. But the most important thing is that individually for each game you can press this button to enter a performance adjustment. For starters, you can adjust how you want the screen to respond, and if you want it to have some rejection of accidental touches. You can also choose how you want the performance to behave and also how you want the GPU to behave specifically. In fact, you could select customization so that you could individually parameter by parameter configure its behavior. Tindy. You could also access some color filters depending on the game you are going to run, and you could select the low latency Wi-Fi option. You can also select whether or not you want the fan to turn on automatically and how you want the quality of the screen recordings to be. And when you open a game, we'll have various tools available in this sidebar. This is the most advanced software you're going to find on any other tablet. Notice that it actually allows you to change the view of these additional plugins. For example, we have a timer option that will appear at the top, which can be useful for some specific games where you need to be aware of how much time is left before you can use a weapon again or something similar. There is also this other plugin that is the hunting mode that will have inverted colors that can also be useful for games that are very dark, so you can visualize your opponents more easily. We're also going to find another plugin, which is the crosshair tool, to have a dot always available, plus it allows you to select specifically how you want that crosshair to look. So for shooting games, it is also quite useful. Another plugin that we have available is the macros plugin, where you can specifically record a series of movements or buttons so that later with a single button activates its endless possibilities. Also available is button remapping, so you can remap the buttons to place them where you want them through these virtual buttons. And finally, there is the Diablo mode, which will raise the processor frequency to full at all times, so it's almost like using it in case of emergency. I would have liked to see some physical buttons or triggers on the back of the tablet that you could map inside the screen. I think it would be an interesting idea, considering that REDMAGIC already has touch triggers on their smartphones, so the software already has it developed. I would have liked to see them add physical buttons. I leave it as a suggestion for a next generation. On the right side, we will find access to applications in floating windows, so you do not have to leave your game to answer a message or something like that. We have controls for the Wi-Fi for the screen refresh rate, where by the way we noticed that there are some games that you need to set the rate to 60 Hz so that they do go to a frequency of 60 frames per second, because otherwise some games are limited to 45 frames per second, maybe a bug that hopefully will be corrected in the future. Also, here is this information widget, which as you will notice can tell us the current frames per second control, the battery status, the duration of our session, and some other data. You can also record replays automatically, so this tool will be constantly recording the screen, and when you make a really good move that you want to somehow see the replay, you can press this button and it will automatically give you a video of moments before and at the moment when you press that button. So it can be used to record your best moments in your games. Also here you can turn off or turn on the fan, lock the screen rotation, record the screen, optimize the RAM, improve the touch response, activate the charge separation as I mentioned a moment ago, so that you can play with the tablet plugged into the power at all times. You also have here an option of some timers or alarms that you can set. You can project the screen as I showed you a moment ago. You can also turn off the screen while the game is downloading some content so that it doesn't consume so much power. And you can take a screenshot, reject calls, and finally control the RGB lights. So the suite of options is too big, and that's the main focus of this tablet software. Let's move on now to talk about the battery. It has a capacity of 10,100 mAh and it sounds like a really good capacity, but like almost all products that are focused on gaming, the battery suffers a lot. In this case, I did an extreme drain test demanding the maximum CPU, GPU, and other sections of the tablet as I usually do in all Android products. And in this case, it reached 3 hours and 34 minutes, which honestly falls quite short of what one might expect. This is because the processor really has a lot of power, so if you push it to the max, it's also going to consume a lot of power. And having the drainer running in the background while we were playing videos didn't make much difference, which confirms to us that the system management isn't that smart. So it will be very important to see what things are running in the background to try to optimize battery life as much as possible. But honestly, it is one of the points that I consider the weakest, although I insist this is in an environment where you demand it to the maximum. If you run games in a less demanding graphics quality or use the tablet to browse applications, surf the internet, and occasionally play some content, obviously the battery life is going to be much higher. This was an extreme test, but taking as a reference the battery life that cell phones with a 5,000 mAh battery, for example, give us, it performs even less than that, so the battery life did not really delight me. On the contrary, the charge is 80 watts and the charger is included in the box. It's a charger that's not too cumbersome, and in 15 minutes it recovered 36% power. It's not as amazing a charge as I was expecting, but it doesn't disappoint. In 30 minutes it gets up to 62% and the full charge finishes it in about an hour. So I think it's okay. And here the good news is that it has a feature called charge separation. So you could be playing games while the tablet is plugged into the power and the current is not going to go through the battery, it's going to go directly to the processor to avoid heating up the battery. So you can get to have very long sessions while you're playing with this tablet plugged in without damaging the battery. But I definitely would have liked to see a longer battery life. Now let's go to the performance test. Let me show you that there are no applications open, and I'll tell you that this device integrates the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 leading version processor. In this case, I opened the web browser with multiple tabs that are opening at the moment, as you can see. Here it has to do also the download speed of the modem, and I am opening multiple tabs in the browser, so you can also see that it is a tablet that is able to manage perfectly well many applications and tabs open. In this case, I have the model width of RAM and storage. So believe me, we are going to find a very good power at the time of having many things open. Notice that now that all the tabs are loaded, switching between them is relatively easy. In fact, I'm also going to open some applications. Here I have, for example, Google Presentations open perfectly. Also a Google spreadsheet, and finally a document. So I already have here some applications and Chrome open with several tabs, and as you see, the device never loses performance. Let's also run a test of the storage speed, which as you see in the readout reaches the maximum possible. It is a UFS storage with very high capacities that is going to help you have a very good speed. In writing, it is obviously not as high as in reading, but it is still a considerably high speed. But obviously, to have a more realistic and more of a practical life test, we're going to export a video. So let's export this project that has been recorded in 4K with this device. The clips are 4 and have a total length of 1 minute once they've been spliced together. And watch, it took only 17 seconds. It is a device that has exaggeratedly high power. The cooling system has 9 layers of heat dissipation. Among them are graphene, thermal gel, several copper sheets, and the fan, which has a very high speed. As you can see, the fan can be completely turned on or off as you like and has 2 modes. One of balanced dissipation that does not go to maximum power, and another called fast cooling that will raise the power to the maximum. As you can see, it also allows you to turn on this fan while using fast charging, and you can mute the fan while making a call to avoid noise in the microphone. Regarding the lights that this fan has, note that you have 4 effects available to select from. One is called constant illumination. This is the constant illumination one. Now you're looking at the one called breathe, which is going to turn on and off smoothly. There's also flicker, which is going to flicker on and off at a faster rate. And then lastly, burst flash, which is going to draw a lot more attention. And by default, when you turn the fan on, it emits a sound like an auto sound, but you have other sounds available, or you can select your own. A sound. It's time to talk about games, but first let me tell you how you can record your gameplays, since in this case fortunately it offers you a switch to turn off or on the microphone and also to turn off or on the system sounds. It all depends on how you want the result to be. The video quality by default is set to medium and that's how we use it, but you can go up to a higher quality and this is focused on the bits per second, as the video resolution anyway will be the same resolution as the screen, so it's a high resolution video, but at the medium bit per second setting it makes fast movements look not so well defined. You can also show your touches and you can also select if you want the recording to stop when you lock the screen. In Call of Duty, this device by default has the graphics quality very high at the maximum rate, but for our test we turned the graphics quality up to the maximum level, and note that you could also turn the frames up to a maximum level or even an ultra level, but the graphics quality is going to drop. We applied some effects and obviously you can activate all the effects in real time with the experimental functions. In short, this device has a very high graphic compatibility, so first we gave priority to the graphic quality and it was a game of 11 minutes, and just for this occasion, for being a device 100% focused on gaming, we also monitored the system while we did the screen recording. Specifically was from minute 3 to minute 6 while we did the screen recording, and as you can notice in the graph does not drop one bit. The performance has 100% stability. It is completely perfect. It maintains a very good performance. Stability is completely perfect, maintains the temperature well, everything goes smoothly, everything goes loose, is a tremendous device to play. Then we did another test giving priority to the refresh rate, and the truth is that also came to surprise 90 frames per second, virtually 100% stability. The temperature was 35.8 degrees Celsius in the external stage, and again was a monitoring of 10 minutes. So the truth is that considering that we had previously played a fairly long game, this tablet has a tremendous cooling knot. It does not get too hot in this type of content that still are not the most demanding that we could find in Android, but most often run, so it is a perfect device to play this type of content. Then we played Car X Street, and in this case note that we adjust the graphics quality with all parameters to the maximum, also went up to the frames without limit to see what it was capable of. And the truth of this game we had never run, so we do not have a specific reference, but you should note that if you have very good graphics, note the reflections in the texture of the cars. Definitely it is a very demanding game that this device could run without any problem, practically reached 60 frames per second on average. But if you had some small moments where it was noted that it is a complicated game, in fact the temperature reached 43.6 degrees Celsius, so I definitely think that if it is a very complex game, but in this case it manages to run without too much complication. Although while we recorded, the screen in the first part seemed to go little fluid. In fact it was the time where it cost more and was a little more unstable. However, curiously later still, while we were recording the screen, if it managed to go up to 60 frames per second to give a much more fluid feeling of the game. Then we played Asphalt 9, and obviously we also tried to adjust the graphics to the highest possible, so we adjusted the graphic quality and better quality to 60 frames per second, and the performance was practically perfect. 60 frames per second, extremely stable. The screen recording also looks at that quality. The temperature did not get too high, considering that in the previous game had already been quite high. So really the experience was very good. Again, then we played Disney Speedstorm, and in this case the game curiously does not show us any specific graphic quality setting, but we made sure that had 60 frames per second configured. So this game has an intelligent adjustment of its graphics depending on the power that comes to have your device, but in this case immediately shows that if you have very good reflections, water texture explosions and other things look extremely advanced, so definitely gets to take advantage of all the power it has, this device, and yet it doesn't seem to be complicated for this device, as it gave us practically again a perfect experience with low heating. Then we played Legends, and obviously we changed the automatic setting to an ultra setting at 60 frames per second, and I forgot to mention that we ran all these games with an Xbox gamepad and we could run them all well again in this game. The performance was very good. Curiously, in this case it didn't go over 60 frames per second as we had noticed. in some other games that suddenly go up to 60 frames per second, as we had noticed in some other games that suddenly go up. So here it maintains a very good super constant experience without any hitch and without warming up again. Then we played Neverland, which is a game that we had not tried so far. So the graphics settings are a little confusing, but as you see, we activated the anti-aliasing to the maximum possible. All the effects we could, we activated them to try to put it a demanding test. And the truth is that the game was short, but despite seeing several explosions and more, the game remained with a very good stability, although this game was limited to 45 frames per second. Then we ran SpongeBob, adjusting the resolution and epic quality to 60 frames per second. And again, the experience was simply very good, although while recording the screen dropped to 45 frames per second. But that is where I tell you there is a little problem, as adjusting the screen to 60 Hz, yes, it can give you 60 frames per second. It seems to have some little problems still, but without recording the screen, the truth is that the experience is totally perfect. A lot of stability, 60 frames per second, completely stable. The temperature does not rise even with this graphic configuration, which was on the highest possible setting. And finally, Henshin Impact by default loads it in high graphics quality, but for the test we set it to very high quality at 60 frames per second, also with motion blur at the highest possible. So a very complicated test, and only for this test we activated the Diablo mode that, as I said, takes the processor frequency to the maximum at all times. So it is a configuration that is not recommended to use constantly, but out of curiosity we use it, and the truth is that the result is simply spectacular. Especially in terms of heating, is a tablet that really takes advantage of the tremendous cooling system that has. So the experience playing this content, even with several explosions and lots of things going on, the highest quality graphic configuration was able to maintain a supreme performance. So we will not have any inconvenience. So if you are looking for a tablet to play, the truth is that this is an excellent choice, although it can improve for future generations. As I said, I would like to add maybe a few buttons in this part to have greater tools. It could even have a stand so that you can place it without the need for any additional tool on a table and can continue playing with a gamepad. So I think there are several possibilities for improvement for a next generation, but I really liked as a first generation. For now, this has been all for this video. If you liked, you can indicate it and see you the next one.